Hey everyone, it's Michael GoosebumpsFan. Happy Friday, I hope you're doing well today. Of course, I am on the final, or second and final, book of the Triple Header series. This is Goosebumps Triple Header Book 2, like I said. A little bit of a different cover. It's kind of cool compared to Part 1, but I'll show you that in a moment. Anyway, here we are. There's a little part of this that I want to show you. Of course, this is actually not like the first book's cover where you can actually see the picture. I don't know if this one just faded away or what. I don't really understand. I talked about that in my review too. But at least on this cover, you can actually see Slim, which is the dead middle one, Righty on the right and Lefty on the left. You can actually see them in a colorized photo, eating a lot of food. I don't even know what they're eating. I haven't looked at that yet. It's like beetles, worms, some kind of green sludge, might be monster blood, I don't know. Anyway, this book's a little bit longer than the first book. I think the first book was what, 240? Something like that in page, or 140 in page length. Let me check, just to be on the safe side. Yeah, about 144. This one's closer to about 160 pages or so. I can't even talk today. I'm sorry, guys. It's raining outside. I'm right by a window. It's throwing me off. This is about 160 pages long. Of course, this is an anthology of 3 stories and kind of a little bit of an introduction to each story by Slim, Righty, and Lefty. Now, once again, I think I didn't really hit on this too much yesterday, but I really like the format of this. I think it's better than the Tales to Give You Goosebumps series, even though the stories themselves in Book 1 and now in Book 2 really aren't that strong, but I do think I like them a little bit more than most, not all, but most of the Tales to Give You Goosebumps stories in that 6-book collection of short stories there. Of course, those were only about 10, 15 pages at maximum for the actual length of those stories, which isn't really a lot to work with, you know? Especially for the size font that Stein has to work with. If it was like a Stephen King font, it was like 5 pages, you know what I mean? That ain't easy at all. But this flies by. I do want to tell you, I do agree with a lot of my friends in the comments section of the previous video. Of course, in the previous book, Book 1, I enjoyed one story pretty much out of the 3. There were elements of the second and third story in that book that I liked, but mainly the first story about a ghost granny was great. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. There is one story in here out of the 3 that I really, really like, and I'll get to that in a moment. And I think it's pretty cool, but it has a lot of issues with it as well. There's a lot of flaws to this book. The first book with that ghost granny story felt very Alvin Schwartz, very scary stories to tell in the dark. It felt like they were trying to tell a story that was kind of dry, but kind of genuinely freaky and genuinely kind of scary. And then you go to like story number 2 and story number 3 about alien kids and crash landings and junk like that. And it was so childish, you know? I don't know. It rubs me the wrong way. But R.L. Stein does that. Goosebumps does that. But in this book, it kind of starts in this childish place and kind of maintains that, I think. And that's kind of flawed, in my opinion. It's a very meandering book. I really don't think these stories are as good to be not 100 or 10 and 15 pages. These are like closer to 50 pages a piece, which is actually a little bit longer than the stories in the first book. Not by much, but a little bit. Somewhere, maybe 10, 5 pages, somewhere in there, longer than the ones in Book 1. I'm surprised this never became a big series. I guess it just didn't sell well or something, but people have always been saying they want a triple header to come back, and frankly, I think it'd be a really good idea. When you look at like the Slappy World books, and how a lot of those have such horrible endings to try to extend them out, very rarely do I feel like there's fluff in those stories, but there are some, like Attack of the Jack, or Attack the Jack, Jack Attack, whatever it's called, that second book in Slappy World as a series, that feels like it should have been a short story, in my opinion. There just wasn't enough steam there. Don't Feed the Weirdo was solid, I think, for the most part, but you could have fixed it with kind of a shorter tale, I think. Triple Header would benefit being released now, but a lot of people in general, and I get this, but I kind of didn't get it years ago. A lot of people really don't like short stories. It seems like it's kind of dying out, and it's kind of sad because to me a lot of writers have taken the Stephen King method of just completely bloating their work. I mean, I think books are so much longer than they actually need to be, and it's one of the big reasons why I'm such a Goosebumps fan. Because I can actually read them, and if I want to, I can finish them in a day. If I have the time available, and if I actually have the motivation, don't have something else I want to do, I can sit down and really burn through a book in a day. And that's pretty cool, because a lot of stuff like Richard Lehman books that I love, or Brian Keene, or Stephen King, or whoever, not so much that Brian Keene and Richard Lehman do this, but some authors like Stephen King, who I admire, and I think is a really good writer, bloats the work out so much, and modern day literature has been affected by that. But anyway, I think a lot of current-day Slappy World stories could have been better as short stories, but I don't think they would have sold. I think people that are in the community that love Goosebumps would have bought it, but it would have been hard to reach new readers, like the Slappy World books managed to do, even though the endings are typically always bad. Anyway, getting back to this book, though, there are 3 stories in here. I think I already mentioned that, and like I said, they're kind of weak. But let me talk about the cover here just briefly for a second. Of course, I like this yellow outline. I think I like this cover more than the first book, but I noticed up here, of course, there's kind of like a holographic image of these guys, you know, Slim, Righty, and Lefty. Now, mind you, I have owned this book. I think I bought it before I started making videos for the channel. Of course, the 28th of February, that is the 4-year anniversary of my channel. I think I've owned this book for like almost 5 years, or 4.5 or something. It's been longer than I've had the channel, I think. But let me show you something that I didn't know until I was reading this book a little bit last night before bed. This little holographic image here, you may or may not be able to see this, but it's changing. In one direction, you have the monsters. In another direction, it turned into freaking R.L. Stine. And I can't get the angle just right. Maybe holographic stuff or whatever this is called. Lenticular? But maybe not. Lenticular is kind of like, there we are. There's Mr. R.L. Stine. That's not on the first book. That kind of baffled me when I saw that. I was reading the book, and I was just chilling in the dark in this room, over in my chair, reading. And, I remember I was closing the book, and I was just kind of, you know, admiring the art on the cover. I assume this is Tim Jacobus art, I think. But I was kind of turning it, and then all of a sudden R.L. Stine's looking back at me, and I was like, I got a little weirded out. It was pretty late last night. It was a rough day at work yesterday a little bit. And I was like, I'm seeing things now. Now I'm seeing Stine on the covers of books. No, that's not what happened, though. Alright, so, getting to the actual contents of the book. The first story in here is called Ghoul School. And I was with it at first, honestly. And then it just kind of doesn't really go anywhere. This feels like a Slappy World type of story that would have had a horrible twist ending. Not that this one doesn't as a short story. But Ghoul School essentially is a kid that gets shipped off to a new school, right? And he notices some weird things. These kids are acting like maniacs. They act like asylum patients, you know? The one kid is like licking the wall and stuff like that. It's not cool. It's very weird, very strange tale, and he's a little spooked by that. And he's like, you know, not a fan. Goes and talks to his teacher when he starts realizing the kids are threatening him, and they're picking up that he's different for some reason. And he talks to his teacher and finds out that this school is a ghoul school, and it's filled with monsters. And she says that she needs him to leave her alone so she can have her ham sandwich. It turns out he misheard her, even though the words on the page are what we read. Just because she might have mumbled doesn't mean that we would have read it wrong. That's so weird. But anyway, it wasn't a ham sandwich, it was a hand sandwich. She had fingers in the sandwich bread. Which was bizarre, but it kind of fit as a weird Goosebumps moment. Goosebumps sometimes, if it's not being just straight out funny or being straight out scary, it can be kind of in this campy place like an Evil Dead movie, and I really like that about it. And it can have kind of an odd, weird sense of humor, or just weird scenes that will stick with you. Think of the end of Monster Blood 2, how wild the ending of that book got. That's kind of, with how much I love it, a great example of really good weirdness in Goosebumps, in my opinion. And this story doesn't go there. It gets a little too wacky for me. I agree with my friends like Spongy, Completionist, Monster Blood, in the comments of the previous video when we talked about it, that this book is... It feels a little bit more weak than the first one did. The first one wasn't a very strong book, aside from the Ghost Granny story, and a couple of cool body horror moments in the other books. But this book overall is just, in general, I think, weaker than book 1. So that would be, you know, I'm not going to do a ranking video for a book series that has less than 3 books. If it has 2 books, there's no point in doing that. But I will rank the stories in my next video. I'm going to record immediately after this. You guys will see that today too, God willing. And it's a weak one, frankly. Ghoul School is not strong. It was a bad start for the book. I was with it for the first like 20 or so pages, and then it started losing me more and more. And then the ending, I was like, okay. And then it moved on to the next tale. The next tale is called The Revenge. And I was kind of curious with that kind of title. What are we going to get with this? And I was surprised with the subject matter. It's about astral projection. And if you don't know what that is, it's a very new age belief that you can go into like a meditative trance and leave your body. And of course, I'll get to the plot setup for that in a moment. But the only thing I've ever seen in movies of this, which surprised me to see that topic in Goosebumps of all things, I'm a massive fan of the Insidious movies, mainly Part 1. I love all of them, pretty much, but I think Part 1 is the best. If you haven't seen the Insidious films, they're like PG-13. James Wan directed for the first two, Lee Winnell directed for 3 and 4, Patrick Wilson's directing the new one that's coming out this year. Those films are fantastic. I think they're phenomenal. I think they're some of the best horror films to come out in recent years. They've been around for, I think, about 10 years now. They're great. I love them deeply. And they covered in the first two astral projection, and I thought the way they did that was really cool. I'd never heard of this whole thing until that first movie and second film as well, too. I think I've seen that first film like 20 billion times, dude. I love that movie. But anyway, that's the topic for this particular story, the revenge. This kid is getting beat up all the time by this kid named Corey, which immediately made me think of Halloween Kills. But Corey was the nerd there, and was getting attacked by band geeks. What in the world? But anyway, I was thinking about this bully named Corey in the story. Corey in the story. I'm a rapper. And basically the kid gets sick of dealing with it. He goes to a psychic type of chick in her own business with his like cousin or sister or whatever at some point before the story took place. And he was talking about how bored he was at this thing and how stupid it was, how fake it seemed. And the lady told him if he came back and gave her $100 that she would teach him how to leave his body and fly through the air or just fly in general, something like that. And this kid gets so sick of getting bullied by that Corey kid, he decides to go to his bank account at the bank and take out $100 and go to that psychic and give it to her. You didn't think it'd make more sense to go to like a school administrator and complain, or go to your parents and complain and say like, look, this dude blacked my eye. Like, what did you need me to show you to get this kid banned? You know, what? The whole logic behind the story is so stupid. I like the topic of the astral projection thing. I thought that was really wild to see that in a Goosebumps story, but man, everything surrounding that crap in this book is not that great. There's a character in here named Fluffy, who's a dog. It's the pet of the main character. I love Fluffy. Fluffy made the story worth reading, even though the ending involving Fluffy was a little bit much. I wasn't a fan of that either. Basically, when he goes to visit this psychic, the psychic tells him after he gives her $100 that she can teach him how to do astral projection. And when that happens, you can basically... She only recommends leaving your body up to an hour at any point you want to. But you only should do it for about an hour or you'll be trapped outside of your body, which will basically make you dead. Your spirit will just kind of wander around probably. Nobody really knows. But apparently, if you leave your body for more than an hour in totality, like you could do 10 minutes today, 10 minutes tomorrow, all the way up to an hour in total, just don't do more than that ever. You know, be careful. You'll run out of time. You'll be locked out of your body, basically, which makes no sense to me. But it's the rule of the game here, and that is what it is. And I wasn't thrilled with that either, if I'm being honest with you. It's kind of a weak story involving astral projection, but I would have loved to have seen a Goosebumps book like entirely focus on that. That's one that could have really been broadened out, with a couple of best friend characters, a couple of plot holes and stuff. We could have had some really cool things for that being like a straight out Goosebumps book. I don't know. I thought that could have been really wild. It could have been called like Astral Adventure or something. You could have done something cool with that, but no. But as a revenge tale, is it satisfying? That's really the thing we should focus on here, in my opinion, because I'm a big fan of revenge stories. There is almost nothing satisfying about the end of the ending of this tale. You know, it really had nothing going for it, aside from the concept of astral projection, which was neat, you know? Anyway, not a great story. I wasn't really with the book at this point. By these two stories, I was kind of like, this is real weak. My friends were right. And then here I am with the final story. And you guys know my love for this kind of topic. As soon as I say the title of the story, you'll know probably where I'm coming from. And this is the one tale that I actually really enjoyed quite a bit, even though it's a little silly. The Mummy with My Face is the final story here. Now, the Mummy with My Face is... It's a mummy tale, obviously, but it's basically about a kid being on like a basically he and his family, it's him and his sister. They're at a museum, basically, in Cairo, Egypt. And I love Egyptian stories. I love mummy stories. I'm a big fan of that. Back in the day, I did my mummy review-a-thon. I love mummy stories, dude. And I think Completionist is the one who told me about this story existing in general. But I never reviewed it. I never touched the story. I didn't feel like it was worth putting that into a book ranking. And after reading it, I'm kind of glad I didn't. I don't think it was worth it. But as flawed as the story is, mainly with the kind of sci-fi direction it kind of goes, I don't hate what I got. I kind of wish the general idea of this was a full book. I thought it would have been great, dude. This could have been one of the best mummy books out there, from Goosebumps in my opinion, or from Stein, or anything, you know? Essentially, the kid is at a museum with his sister. The parents are off to some kind of convention, I think is what it said. They're on some kind of business trip there, basically. And the sister is interested in the museum stuff and the things she's hearing about this Egyptian mummy stuff. But the main kid is bored to tears. He doesn't want to be there. So, a dude, a very weird dude with a long black beard and a white robe comes over to them and says like, hey, you know, my name is Ari. I'm going to go ahead and take you to this thing I want to show you because you're so bored. And the kids say, okay, we'll follow the random stranger we met in another country that we've never been to before. And they follow him into a pyramid. Yes, our main characters have no brain. Just so you know, don't do that. Kids, don't follow strangers. I don't care if you think you know them. Don't do it. Don't do it. Be smart. Have a brain. So he leads them into the dark, and it keeps getting darker and darker to the point where they can't see anything. They have to kind of follow his voice in this dark area. And then he just disappears. From the story, from everything. He's just gone, right? And he may or may not come back later on, you know? But that's a whole nother point for later on. Well, while they're wandering around, they happen to find photos, like pictures that are drawn, that look like our main character, and then eventually of the sister. And they're like, what's going on with that? It's a little strange for the ending of the book. It really doesn't make any sense, frankly, why they find pictures of themselves. You might think, when you're hearing this story, told by me, summarized by me, without any spoilers, you might think you know the direction the story is going and why there are, like, pictures of both of them. You absolutely do not know. Because it's not explained, it's stupid. It's plain out stupid, like real stupid. So, again, I mentioned it kind of goes in a sci-fi direction. Not even really sci-fi, just a little bit. I don't want to say anything, because I don't want to spoil it for you. But it's really dumb. But they run into some mummies. And the mummy scenes are great. I love that about it. I think it's really cool. This would have been a better actual novel than what we got as a short story. You could have had a little bit more oomph to it, you know? You could have done something cooler with it. It kind of would have been a retread of some mummy stories, like the original book back in the day. I forgot what it's called. There's so many mummy books in Goosebumps, I can't remember the title, and a lot of them sound like old Universal Monsters mummy films, so I can't get the titles right for anything. But I think it's The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, I believe. Anyway, this book is so flawed. This story, this final story, The Mummy with My Face or whatever, is so boring. And I don't know, I'm really let down. I really wanted something really fun to read. And when I saw the title having the word mummy in it, I was really stoked for that. Now, with that being said, I do think it is the best story in the book. I was the most engaged with the story, but it's very flawed, and it's such a letdown by the end of it, especially if you're a big mummy fan like myself, and you like that kind of storyline. You're going to be disappointed, frankly. It's not something really great like Don't Wake Mummy, which is a Tales to Give You Goosebumps story. Probably my favorite of that entire series. Possibly, I don't know. But it's not something excellent like that. It's kind of just a letdown in general. Just totally. It's just a letdown. So with all that being said, this second book, Triple Header Book 2, is, it's not thrilling by any means. It has its moments, but mainly in the third story. The first two, you have to read like 100 pages of really nothing really happening that's really that engaging. Interesting sometimes, but not engaging, you know, not really dragging you into the story, really making you wonder where it's going to go. Nothing like that, and it's kind of a letdown for that. I'm a little sad by that, because I wanted to enjoy this. I hope that I would be the standout and like this more. I try to go into all these Goosebumps books, just in general, giving the chance for me to love them. I really do try to do that, and this one let me down a lot. But it's not much underneath book 1, in my opinion. There are cool things in here, but it's so weak. It's really, really disappointing. I think my rating for this book is really going to kind of surprise some of you. But this is worse than book 1, in my opinion. Even though I like the mummy story, I do think that I like that mummy story, even with the flaws, better than the other 2 weak stories from book 1. Maybe. I haven't really fully decided on my ranking. I did the list I think I'm going to look it over again before I start recording it after this video, just to make sure that I'm 100% sure that that's where I want that placement on that, but I don't know. I really like that story, but it's really flawed, dude. Anyway, with all that being said, guys, that is my review for Triple Header Book 2. I'm kind of sad as I make this video. This is the last book. This is number 10 of my final books that I have to review for the channel. From this point on, I have 9 books left to review, and then I'm done. And assuming everything keeps going the way it's going right now, I have like 2 weeks until I'm done with this channel. And I'm really let down by that. I'm really sad about that. Of course, I'll review future book releases and stuff, and movie releases, and the new show coming out this year, supposedly. You know, I'll talk about all those things. I have board games to review for you guys. I have a lot of things, but I'm kind of putting all of that later on, until later in the year, when those books release, and so on and so on. But for right now, I'm not down for a lot of it. I'm really sad, frankly. If I'm being honest with you, I'm really kind of let down. I think some of you guys are kind of sad, too, because we're so close to the end, dude. I think I've read like 25 books in the last 4 weeks. It's probably less than 25. It's probably closer to 20. But anyway, this is number 10 of the final ones. I have 9 left, and it's kind of depressing. But anyway, I'll still be around every once in a while. Anyway, Triple Header Book 2. If I had to rate this book on a 5-star basis, sorry for the draggy review, by the way. Just kind of rambling, being all over the place. It's rainy outside. It does that to me when I review. You guys have probably seen reviews in the past where you wondered why I was dragging through, and that's why. If I had to rate this book on a 5-star basis, again, it might surprise you, but the first 2 stories are so rough. Not really a fan of them. I would give it like a 2 out of 5 stars. I know that seems really low, but dude, if you haven't read this, I don't think you can really understand where I'm coming from. Usually a 2 out of 5 for me. Again, I try to restate this. I don't really give this very often. Usually my reviews as of late have been a lot of 3 out of 5s. A 2 out of 5 for me is typically when it's a book that I think is generally kind of bad, but has good things in it that I genuinely enjoy, or just one good story, for example, in here that has a really flawed ending. If it's that weak, it's a 2 out of 5. It's underneath average for me, and that is a weaker book than Book 1, in my opinion. All that being said, though, what did you guys think about Triple Header Book 2? Did you read the book? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Are you going to read it at some point? I'd love to hear all that down below, too. Do you like this book more than Book 1? Or is Book 1 perfect to you or bad? Or what about this book? Is it perfect or bad? I'd love to hear all that and your thoughts down in the comment section down below. And like I said earlier in my review, I will be doing a ranking video immediately after this, ranking the 6 stories from worst to best. And hopefully you'll enjoy that, too, since I don't have a third book to give you guys a ranking for 3 books of worst to best. I guess we'll do this. But anyway, have you read the book? What do you think? 2 out of 5 stars for me. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great weekend. God bless you guys. Happy Friday, too. And goodbye.